Hello everybody and welcome back. So for this final lesson of the module, we are going to be talking about how to take everything that we've done up to this point and take it further. How to keep learning, because obviously I can't cover absolutely every single function and class and module, and it's always expanding. There's just far too much to take on. So I want to equip you with a way to keep learning. Now, obviously, as we move forward into doing practical examples, of course, we're going to come across new things that we're going to keep learning. But more than anything, it's important to know how to help yourself, because the process that we're going to go through now, where we're going to do practical examples of this, that's basically how I learn on a daily basis. Is you're set a task, you say, okay, you need to do this type of tool. Now, you've never done that before, because otherwise you'd already have that script. So you're going to come across functions that you've never used before, or you're required to achieve some certain effect from the tool and you have no idea how to do that. So you need to know how to get that information, how to learn from Python itself in order to sort of expand into areas and things that you've never done before. And with Python, it's very easy. They make it so easy. Not only is Python extremely well supported online, because obviously Python is not exclusive to Houdini. It is, it goes across multiple platforms, different operating systems. Python is very vast, right? So there's already a ton of support for Python itself. And then Houdini makes it really easy, because the Python module and the sort of help file for it is fantastic and gives you all the information you need. So really, there's no reason to ever be afraid or intimidated about the sections of Python or of the Houdini module that you don't know yet, because all the information is right there, and it's laid out in a way that assists you in constantly learning and growing, right? So I'm going to take you through this help file and just show you how to best use it so that you know exactly where to look for information, because otherwise it can be a little bit frustrating having to dig through this help file, searching for something that you know is there. So the primary thing to find is the Houdini module. This Python module basically has everything that Houdini has to offer within Python, all within one module, right? It contains the submodules, classes, and functions for everything inside of Houdini. So even other modules or whatever will be contained within this one global module, right? And you'll find it on the side here under reference. There's Who, but you can also just search for it. In the search, if you just type HOU, you'll find it right at the top there. Okay, very, very easy. And this is where you're going to get everything. All of your information is in this one module. Yeah, you can filter here, so you can keep searching, but also it's sometimes very useful to actually scan through this list and see what is available, because a lot of the times that's even how I learn new things, is just every now and then when I'm searching for one function, you're scrolling down and you're reading and something just stands out. So like, oh, that looks interesting. I wonder what this does. And then, and slowly but surely you add these kind of functions to the arsenal of things that you know. Right. So it's important to know that this whole module over here contains submodules, classes, and functions, right? So we've spoken about classes and functions a lot, but you'll notice here that the functions all have the round brackets at the end. I just want to point that out because they are all now contained within one big area, so you need to know whether you're looking at another subclass versus a function. Okay, so and any of these pages that you go to, if we just go to this top one, so base frame, right? Now if you middle click, it opens it in another tab, right? Just like in a normal browser. And at the top here, you'll see that it shows you that this is a class. Okay. A lot of the times it'll say it as well in the description, but sometimes they don't. But either way, at the top of the page, it's always going to tell you that this is an actual class versus a function, right? So if it's a function, it'll show you here, function. And if it's a module, obviously it also won't have round brackets, so it'll look like a class, but when you go to it at the top, it'll say module or submodule, right? Okay. And then as you get more used to Python, you'll start getting used to how to work with class and functions differently. Like, you know, what does that mean? Right. So now what I've done is I've pulled up two very useful and common ones as an example. One is a class and one is a function, right? So I'm gonna use that as an example to kind of show you how you can get information from this help file. So what I've pulled up is who.node, the class, and who.node, the function, right? So again, this is why it's important to pay attention to this, is because sometimes there are overlapping names, who.node, it can become very confusing. As I've said before as well, look for the capital letters. Like normally, there is a capital letter at the beginning for classes, right? And then a lowercase for functions. Now, in normal Python, they actually recommend that for functions or for anything that you don't use this camel case like they do here, well, where there's a lowercase first letter and then uppercase later on, right? But Houdini seems to kind of do that and break that convention, so just look out for that, right? Okay. So let's take a look at the node, who.node class. Okay. Now there's obviously a nice brief description, and then it shows you all of the inheritance. So this is based on classes. So it's basically showing you that this is actually the superclass, and then this is a subclass of that, and then who.node is a subclass of this network movable item. And then who.node has a whole bunch of subclasses all on the same level. All right. So who.node refers to any actual nodes in your scene, but remember, you can have SOPs, you can have chops, you can have DOPs. There are a variety of different node types, separate from the fact that each node has its own type as well. For example, SOP nodes have multiple types. There's a box SOP and there's a transform SOP. So that's the type, but there are still actual subclasses which determines kind of the context of those nodes. But what it means for this to be the superclass and these to be subclasses of who.node, it means that they inherit most of the same properties from this parent class, except there are certain exceptions, but they have to be manually coded in. So a SOP node will take everything from this parent class except for the things that it is told deliberately not to take from it. And it will then also have its own additional things. So it may have a function that only exists in the SOP node that maybe the who.node doesn't have. Okay. Now, if you do grab a node, it will never actually be just a who.node type. It will always be one of these subclasses, but because it's inheriting from the who.node class, we can look through this list of functions, and most of them should be applicable to any of the nodes that we have, right? In fact, as far as I know, all of these will be applicable to the subclasses, but the subclasses may have additional functions that who.node does not have. All right. So moving on from that, we have a nice long description, and I would suggest that you read this because a lot of the time it's actually very useful information. For example, the same thing I keep telling you guys, please be careful not to confuse this class with the function who.node, right? So it's even trying to get you to not make that same mistake. Okay. Also notice that these are clickable, so we can click on this and actually go to the who.node or hover over it, and you'll see the little description. Okay. So it gives you a little example here, or like a little tip. It tells you what it's actually doing. It even explains the fact that it's a subclass, that this is a superclass, and that your SOP nodes will actually be its own type. It tells you how to create and destroy nodes. So there's a lot of good information here. And then it lists all of the methods, right? So remember, methods are class functions. Okay. Now, you can filter or sort by different orders over here, and you can obviously collapse and expand. Now, when you search over here, obviously, I find this search useful, this filter, when I know what I'm looking for. But actually, when I don't, I love to just scroll down, because the amount of times that something pops out and then you learn something about the actual the class is great. So the more time you spend in this, the more you're actually going to learn about the Houdini module. Right. So let's take one of these for an example and show you how to actually read this, because this, a lot of the times people are just going to look at that, click here, open and read, which is fine. There's obviously great information in here. But before we even do that, let's not skip this first line. Here in the beginning is so much information. First of all, it tells us the function name, right? Now let's actually not use node, because this is a little confusing, that node is who.node. Like, it's under the who.node class. It's got a node function, but the node function is not the same function as who.node the function. Okay, so let's move on from that and not get confused. But let's say maybe here, children. Okay, so what does this children function do? Well, first thing we can see is the fact that in the round brackets it's empty. This means that it takes no arguments, right? And that is important. It is vital information to know that when you use this function, you need to give no arguments, but also you cannot give an argument. If you give an argument, this will fail, right? So it's telling you exactly how to use it. Then let's just move down a little bit and find one that does have. So you'll see some of them do have arguments. So like glob over here, it takes one argument called pattern. Now this pattern has to be given, because it has no equal sign, it has no default, so we cannot use this function unless we give it a pattern. Now what pattern is normally explained inside of here, right? So you'll see it does talk about exactly what the pattern is, and it'll tell you the type and everything that you need, okay? And it also gives you examples, which often help clear things up if you're not sure what to feed it as that argument. Over here you'll see examples of them actually using it, okay? Now, next to that is an argument that has an equal sign. This means that this has a default. So we can give it an ignore case value. And often what the default does gives us a hint as to what it should be. So true or false, probably, right? But it normally will explain it as well. So it'll tell you about what ignore case actually does. So true for case insensitive matching, right? So now we know exactly how to use this. We can give it one argument, or we can give it two arguments. If we give it more or less than that, then it's going to fail. Okay. Now also, what does it actually give us, or what does it do? The description is going to tell you a lot about what it's going to do, but over here next to this function, it has this little arrow sign, and that means returns, right? So remember I told you, and we've used it before, where some functions run in place, like they actually just do something or make a change to something else, but they don't actually return a value. So if you stored this in a variable, if you said x equals and then ran the glob function, okay, so that would be who.glob, right? And then ran this function and filled in the pattern and everything. What would it store inside of x? Now with some of these functions, it's important to note that they do not return anything. Okay, let's go down and find one just so you can see what I'm talking about. Right, so here, create or move visualizer. This has no arrow. This does not return anything. It just creates something. Okay. And it's good to know that what it returns, it doesn't return a reference to the thing that it created, because some functions do that. If you create a node, then it's creating a node, but it also returns a reference to the node that it created, right? It returns an instance of the who.node class. But some things that create, or in this case like here, destroy, this deletes a node. And it doesn't return anything, it just does something in your scene. Okay. Whereas here, this glob is going to return something. Now, what is it returning? It's returning a tuple of who.node. Okay, so in other words, a tuple like this. So you know, we have a list of items, except instead of these numbers, it would be a list of instances of the who.node class, right? And the reason it tells you what class is because now you know, based on what it returns, you could loop through this tuple and perform any functions that exist in this class, right? Now this happens to be the same class that we're on, but it's not always going to be that case. Sometimes it'll return a tuple of parameters or something like that, you know. Let's look for something else. Like here, this is going to return a who.node type. Okay, so if we on a node we run, because we have to be on a node in order to run any of the functions under who.node. Okay, because that is this class. Then we can run this type function. When we do run the type function, it's going to return a who.node type class. Okay, so now we follow this. We can middle click here, go to this class to see what actions we can perform on that. So now we can take the who.node type and ask for its name, or the name of the components, or the category, right? And each of these is going to do something different. So if we ask for the name, it's then going to return a string, right? So now we know exactly what we can do. And then, you know, obviously we could perform functions on that string. We could take the string, which is a result of running this function, and split it up because it's now a certain Python data type that has its own functions. Okay. So really good to know what it returns, and also that you can follow these links to what they actually are. And you must pay attention to what it returns, because a lot of the time you're going to make an assumption thinking that, oh, it's going to return something. Meanwhile, it's returning something else. For example, sometimes you can have frozen geometry, or you know, which is kind of geometry that is almost cached, and it doesn't matter if the original node changes, that cache will remain unchanged, versus unfrozen geometry, or like live geometry. And some functions you assume are just returning a reference to the geometry, but actually it's giving you frozen, and you need to be very careful of which one it is, because it matters. So please do come and actually read this help file. I literally sit with this open all day. Like, you know, it doesn't matter how much you learn about this module and about Python and about Houdini, you're always needing to reference this, because there is no way you could memorize all of this, right? Like, there's absolutely no way. So use it as it's a tool. Okay, so now we know what it returns, and you know how to work with what it returns. So we've got the description as well. We've got examples. So this is mostly how we're going to use this. And let's just jump over and double check a function, just so you know that the function kind of is the same thing. It's going to tell us exactly what it returns, or what it does over here, and more information about how to use it. And it often gives us useful references to as what else to reference, or what it replaces, as in what essentially what HScript or Houdini expressions are similar to this, that this can replace. Okay. Now another way to get help in Houdini, besides the actual help file, the help browser, is just directly in your Python shell, or in the Python source editor we can type it. So I'm going to import my Houdini module just in case. And let's say we wanted to find out more about that who.node class. Okay. Well, I can actually just, one of the first things we can do is type dir. And what dir is doing is returning a list of methods from inside of this class, right? So this should essentially return a list like this. Under hierarchy, this list of node, nodes, item, whatever. It's going to return a list, but obviously not nice and neatly sorted under these different categories, like these different headings. But it should list every function, like every method, subclass, or submodule that we have inside of this, including magic methods, which are actually hidden. All right. So let's print dir, and you'll see here, so you see there there's our magic methods with a double underscore. Okay, so we were working on these just recently. For example, there is the, okay, it's split across 2 lines, so it's a little bit unfortunate, but there is the repr function. So now when we print a who.node, we know where that information is coming from. And there's init as well that we used. Okay, and I don't see an add, so now we know that we cannot add these a class who.node to another who.node. It's going to return nothing. Okay, so here is a list of all these arguments. Obviously, we're not going to go through this entire list, but if you did, you'd spot some of the functions that we saw just now. There we are. There's a destroy. Okay, so it's basically just a list of everything inside of that, which can be very useful. Now, another way is if we just type help. So we run the help function on this this class, and let's just give it some space. Apply, and now you'll see that we have a massive help file for this. In fact, so massive I actually think it can't display it all, so that's a little bit of a problem. I wonder if there's I don't know if there's a way to actually get it to be able to display more, but anyway, yeah, that's unfortunate. But you'll see here it's essentially like the help browser that we were just in. So it tells you the name of the function and the list of arguments. Where over here it's going to tell you exactly what the arguments are, including self, because obviously that's, it's a method. It tells you what it returns, and then it's got that description. Okay, so sometimes when you're wanting some quick help or whatever, it's easy to just, you're wanting to check a function like, oh, how do I use the absolute function? You just say, well, help absolute, and just kind of check what that does, and then move on. But for massive ones like this node class, who.node class, I would very much prefer to use the help browser, because yeah, this is a lot harder to read. Okay. So besides all of the actual help files that Houdini provides for you, don't be afraid to Google for help. Honestly, it really does help, especially with Python, because Python is so well supported. It goes across so many different applications that all of the help is out there, and the resources online for it are amazing. So if you want to continue learning more about the basics of Python, there are loads of even free resources out there, and just going through, as we did go through the help file now for the Houdini module, you can just go through the Python modules. It's all out there, it's all open. But hopefully this module has helped you sort of start piecing some of that together and giving you a deeper understanding of the language itself. Now, as we wrap up this module and move on to the next one, we're going to be going into using the actual Python that we've learned. We're going to be building practical examples, doing real world things, like showing you how Python can help in your everyday life, how it can, fix things in your scene, or how you can use it to speed up your workflow, and then build your own tools so that recursive things that you're having to do and waste time on can just be, a button click and it all does it automatically for you, right? So obviously when we put these principles that we've done in module 1 into practice, that's when it's really going to stick. So if you're struggling to remember things or kind of put it all together and see where this is going, it's going to start making sense now. But you may have to refer back to this module again and again. I honestly did that when I first learned Python. I went to the same tutorial again and again and again until it sunk in. So don't be afraid to do that. Really, learning the basics is the best thing you can do. So come back to this module, whichever lesson you need. That's why I divided it into much smaller videos and pieces, and ask on the forums as well if you do get stuck, or Google it, use the help file. This is basically, this whole module has been about empowering you to get your Python knowledge started, right? And now in the next one, we're going to do some actual examples of how you can use this in Houdini, right? We'll get ourselves set up with some external scripts and editors and things, and show you how Houdini's kind of working with Python behind the scenes. And then we're going to be building tools in all the different contexts, so using Python in the shell, using Python in the shelf tools and the HTAs, startup scripts, everything. And then we will move on to the third module where we build our final and far more advanced tool set at the end. So that's where we're going to take all the different contexts and combine them into something really practical and show you how, what it takes to build up a system or even a whole pipeline from the ground up. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this module. I hope that Python is making a little bit more sense and that you're also feeling, like exploring it, trying different functions, go through here, see what you can do. And then I will see you all in the next lesson, in the next module, so that we can put this all into practice. All right, thank you and see you.